me. You ever wake up ready to conquer the day only to be conquered by a Pepto pink sous-vide with eyelashes? That's how I found out my HOA president confused community service with small-scale dictatorship, me. And that my driveway wasn't mine anymore. It was her throne room. And eventually I had to respond in a way that even Karens can understand. No yelling, no swearing, just horsepower. Me, what would you do if someone treated your driveway like their personal garage? They wanted compliance. I gave them crushed leather seats and a concrete refund. Drop your revenge ideas in the comments, me. I might need a few for next time. They say some people are born leaders. Madison Klein wasn't one of them. She was forged in the fires of misplaced authority and reheated soy lats, me. On the morning of my biggest contract of the year, I walked outside, coffee in hand, ambition in my chest, and smack into the glimmering rear end of looked like Barbie's getaway car. Right there. Centered. Parked like it paid rent. A pink monstrosity with glitter hubcaps and the kind of custom plate that screams, Daddy's credit card. I thought maybe it broke down. I thought maybe she was visiting someone. Me, I thought wrong. Madison, in all her rhinestone glory, was perched on her front steps like a suburban gargoyle, sipping something overpriced and morally suspicious. "Good morning, Warren," she chirped, me. Like she hadn't just squatted on my only exit from reality. I gave her the benefit of the doubt and asked politely if she could move her fluorescent status symbol. She blinked once, sipped her drink, and said, "Me, I'm afraid your driveway is non-compliant with HOA Code 14.7, Section 8, Paragraph C, which translated from HOAs meant you're 9 inches short, peasant." According to her clipboard, yes. She carries one like a weapon. My driveway didn't meet the newly updated and shockingly fake 14-foot width rule. Mine was 13.2 feet. Apparently, that was enough to justify turning my property into her TED Talk. I told her the house was built in '97, back when HOA still sounded like a skin condition. Me and the driveway had been grandfathered in like an old war medal. She swatted that fact away like it was a fly landing on her pilot's mat. The rules apply to everyone, Warren, me. Even contractors with outdated concrete. She said it like she was disappointed in me personally for not demolishing my own driveway. I mentioned, calmly, that I had a $25,000 job waiting and needed to leave, me. She tilted her head, smiled like she just stole a puppy, and said, "Sounds like a personal problem." I didn't know whether to laugh or set her mailbox on fire. I called the police, me, thinking surely blocking someone's property with a rolling glitter bomb must break some law. They showed up, nodded solemnly, and said the 5 worst words in suburban law enforcement. "It's a civil matter, sir." Madison retreated into her home like she'd just fended off an intruder with the Constitution. Meanwhile, I was left explaining to my client that I missed a critical install window because my driveway had been hijacked by a sparkle tyrant with a Pinterest addiction. They didn't believe me. I wouldn't have either. I lost the job, 25 grand gone, replaced by a 65 cab ride in the knowledge that the HOA had gone full Hunger Games. I thought the SUV was bad. I hadn't seen the sign yet, or the spreadsheet, me. Or the fine she was drafting for non-cooperative body language. This wasn't parking, it was a prelude, and class was just getting started. Want to know what Madison installed next? Spoiler, me. It wasn't sanity. I started the morning like a reasonable man, with peace in my heart and ibuprofen in my pocket. I even brought coffee to Madison's porch as a gesture of suburban diplomacy, me. She accepted it with the grace of a medieval queen accepting poisoned wine. I said, "Let's talk this out." And she smiled like she'd been rehearsing a monologue. Me, that's when she pulled out the laminated sheet. "Warren, according to revised bylaw 14.7, your driveway no longer qualifies as a designated vehicle transition zone." I had to reread it. Not because it was complex, because it was stupid. I didn't know whether to ask for translation or a priest. I pointed out the driveway's been fine for 26 years, and she responded by marching over to my lawn. Me planting a stainless steel sign like she was claiming new territory for HOA land. Reserved for HOA enforcement. It read professionally etched like she'd commissioned it from a weapons manufacturer. Me, she hammered it into the soil with the authority of someone who's never paid for their own tools. I told her that wasn't legal. She winked and said, "It's a visual reminder of your pending compliance opportunity." The woman spoke like she'd swallowed a thesaurus and burped out litigation. Figuring maybe the cops would finally intervene, I called the local PD, again. Officer Harkins arrived with the enthusiasm of a man regretting every career choice since high school. He looked at the SUV, then at the sign, then at Madison, who greeted him like she was running for prom queen of courtroom television. After listening to both sides, he sighed and said, "This is a civil matter. Try mediation." Mediation. With someone who refers to my driveway as a non-conforming ingress platform. That's not conflict resolution. That's verbal justing with a bureaucratic banshee. Later that afternoon, a formal letter showed up taped to my door, because apparently mailboxes are too informal for HOA decrees. The letter included a new HOA rule, any driveway under 14 feet was subject to temporary educational encroachment. That's Madison's way of saying she can park wherever the hell she wants if your concrete's an inch too skinny, And the cherry on top, the letter included a $75 administration fee for non-engagement in constructive dialogue. That's right. She fined me for not enjoying our argument. That night, I found her Instagram post. A photo of the sign, the SUV, and me in the background scratching my head like I was the one who needed help. Captioned, "One residence refused progress. We provide parking education FAQ compliance queen." I wasn't just fighting an HOA now. I was fighting a woman who thought hashtags were legal defense strategies, And I had a feeling the next phase wouldn't just involve concrete, it would involve PowerPoint, folding chairs, and public humiliation. Sometimes the scariest kind of power isn't backed by laws, it's backed by people who think they are the law, Never underestimate someone who treats a clipboard like it's a badge and a street sign like it's sacred scripture. I thought the stainless steel sign was the worst of it. Then the invitation arrived, complete with RSVP instructions and a required dress code. Next up, community re-education. Trust me, you don't want to miss what Madison calls the enlightenment circle. The HOA tried to lighten me, so I lit up their projector with the truth. They wanted harmony. I gave them screenshots, sarcasm, and 7 nervous neighbors in folding chairs. The envelope was gold trimmed like it was announcing royalty, not humiliation. Mandatory community harmony workshop. It read, with a RSVP line and something that looked suspiciously like a dress code suggestion. The bottom corner said attendance required for all residents under review. That meant me. Madison had finally gone full cult leader. I half expected the next invite to come with a candle and matching robes. I showed up wearing a collared shirt and the emotional stability of a man who'd seen war, drywall mold and now PowerPoint-based justice. Her living room was transformed into what I can only describe as a TED Talk hosted by a wedding planner with a grudge. 8 neighbors sat in rows of metal chairs, all looking like they'd been summoned by a tax audit. Madison stood at the front with a headset mic and a wireless clicker, pointing proudly at a projector screen labeled case study. Warren Grant a lesson in curbside awareness. I tried to leave. She gestured to the front row and said, "Please sit here so the group can benefit from your experience." She said it like I was a guest lecturer, not the opening act in a roast. Slide 1, my lawn. Labeled, Exhibit AZ. Vertical misalignment. Slide 2, my gutter. Captioned, non-reflective drainage protocol violation. Slide 3, my pickup truck bumper outlined in red, with bold text that read, aesthetic threat to community values. I looked around the room for support. 3 neighbors avoided eye contact. 2 had the please, don't make eye contact or I'll explode face. 1 man looked genuinely sorry, but still didn't move. Then came the interactive portion. Madison leaned forward and asked, "Would you like to share your journey with community improvement so far?" She said it like Dr. Phil with a taser and the moral authority of a DMV supervisor on espresso. When I politely declined, she nodded like I just confirmed my guilt. Coach Compliance, a guest speaker she'd flown in from God knows where, took over next. He wore a branded polo and had the energy of a man who rehearses mirror speeches about leaf blower restrictions. He opened with, "Accountability begins at the driveway." I had to physically stop myself from clapping out of pure sarcasm. The workshop ended with a mandatory re-education schedule, 4 classes at 100 each, miss 1. A $500 non-participation penalty. The HOA had turned therapy into extortion. I walked out with my dignity folded neatly inside a pamphlet titled, Thriving Through Compliance. If your HOA meeting has a guest speaker named Coach Compliance, you're not a neighbor, you're a hostage, And if the projector screen says your name in bold, it's not enlightenment, it's execution with refreshments. I thought PowerPoint was Madison's endgame. I was wrong. The next morning, she brought backup and a second car. What kind of safety initiative needs 2 engines and a cooler? 1 car was ego. 2 was a military blockade. Madison's friend June parked behind her pink SUV, forming the world's first passive-aggressive driveway dam. It started just before 7 a.m. I looked outside expecting my usual concrete purgatory. But today Madison had upgraded. Behind her pink monstrosity was a deep blue BMW sedan, parked tight enough to cause an insurance claim if I sneezed wrong. Both cars boxed me in like I was under house arrest but make it luxury. Sitting beside them was a pop-up canopy, a card table, and 2 folding chairs that looked stolen from a church basement. I walked out holding a coffee and the last thread of my patience. Madison looked up from her laptop like she was orchestrating a political coup. "Good morning, Warren. This is a community safety initiative. We're monitoring all traffic on non-compliant driveways. I almost dropped my mug. I asked why she needed backup and a beverage cooler to monitor anything. She pointed at my garage and said, "Me. Your property contains a military-grade vehicle, and some residents have expressed concerns." By residents, I assume she meant the voices in her head. She was referring to my legally registered, decommissioned M60 tank, painted navy blue, harmless, and mostly used as a glorified conversation starter at block parties. Madison, of course, turned it into a neighborhood WMD. That afternoon, an email blast from the HOA hit every inbox in Oak Grove Acres. Urgent resident alert, suspicious equipment and escalating behavior. Attached were zoomed in, desaturated photos of my tank, taken from what I now know was her bedroom window. It looked like an expose on suburban terrorism. Then came the calls. One from a retired couple asking if it was true I was stockpiling military-grade fuel. Another from a past client politely canceling a kitchen remodel because we don't want the wrong kind of attention. I lost 3 jobs in 48 hours and gained a reputation I hadn't earned. Madison didn't just sabotage my driveway. She detonated my business from her lawn like it was a command post. My resume went from reliable contractor to potential doomsday prepper overnight. And the worst part, the HOA newsletter quoted her saying, "We regret that some residents may feel targeted, but safety must come before individual pride." Individual pride. Lady, this wasn't about pride. It was about being able to leave my house without ducking under a tent flap. Even the neighborhood kids were whispering. One asked if my tank had missiles. Another said their mom told them not to ride bikes near my property. Un case Warren snaps. Snapping. I was the calmest man on the street, and I had the therapy bills to prove it. But Madison didn't need truth. She had Wi-Fi, a ring light, and a neighborhood's worth of mild anxiety. She didn't just turn me into a threat, she made it viral. A lie gets halfway through the HOA newsletter before the truth gets unmuted on the Facebook page. And by then, your reputation's already wearing handcuffs. I thought losing jobs was rock bottom. But then came the wellness inspection notice, along with a $2,700 bill and the words, "Mental evaluation required." So how do you defend your sanity when the court of public opinion is chaired by Madison? I knew things were bad when the UPS guy started leaving my packages 2 houses down like I was radioactive. The Amazon driver wouldn't even make eye contact. You'd think I was hoarding live grenades instead of power tools and vitamin gummies. It hit me on a Wednesday. An envelope slipped under my door like a ransom note. No postage, no envelope branding. Just a typed letter on HO letterhead titled Wellness Assessment Protocol. Urgent review required. Inside was a bill for $2,700 and a scheduled mental and behavioral evaluation. At my home within 48 hours. The words, "Failure to comply may result in escalated action," were bolded, underlined, and practically screaming in legal font. I've been audited by the IRS. This felt worse. I called Madison, hoping this was a typo. She answered with, "Warren, we just want to make sure you're a safe presence in our shared environment." Shared environment. Mom, you're parked on my soul. Next morning, I heard whispers before I saw faces. 2 HOA board members I'd never spoken to before stood on my lawn, wearing matching polos and the self-importance of mall security guards. They had clipboards, measuring tape, and expressions like I was one hissy fit away from being tranquilized. I asked what exactly they planned to assess. The taller one replied, "We're evaluating the safety condition, and emotional energy of the property." Emotional energy. What does that even mean? Was my mailbox giving off threatening vibes? Was my front hedge projecting instability? Clients stopped calling. Neighbors crossed the street when I stepped outside. Even Bill, my only semi-ally, started suggesting I maybe keep the garage door shut just in case. It was the first time in my life I was being treated like a loaded weapon. Because I owned a demilitarized tank that hadn't moved an inch. But Madison wasn't targeting the tank. She was targeting me. She'd poisoned the entire neighborhood with so many fake facts and spreadsheet-driven slanders that my reputation collapsed like a folding chair under pressure. I wasn't Warren the contractor anymore. I was Warren the ticking time bomb with gutter violations and emotional turbulence. And then came the HOA group text. Yes, they had one. I was added without permission and instantly bombarded with messages. Has Warren complied yet? Is he still refusing the inspection? My kids are scared to walk past his driveway. I wanted to scream, but instead I just left the group like it was a bad church retreat. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I was done. Done being polite. Done being reasonable. Done being the only adult in a kindergarten of clipboards and conspiracy theories. Sometimes the only thing more dangerous than a narcissist is a board of them with matching polos. Especially when they've weaponized bureaucracy and gossip into full-blown psychological warfare. They thought I'd snap. Instead I went quiet. Too quiet. What happens when you push a man who never wanted a fight, but owns a 60-ton solution? Some people meditate. Others do yoga. Warren warms up a 60-ton tank named Mildred. At 5:30 am I woke up calmer than I'd been in 2 weeks. There's a particular kind of peace that comes when you run out of options and realize you're the option. I made eggs. I sipped black coffee. Then I walked out to the garage and lifted the canvas off Mildred like I was unveiling a museum exhibit with consequences. My M60 tank hadn't moved since I bought her from a collector 3 years ago. Legal. Registered, insured, harmless, until pushed. I ran diagnostic, checked hydraulics, flipped every switch like I was prepping for the HOA Hunger Games. If they wanted drama, they were about to get a 60-ton monologue. But first I gave civility one last breath. I walked across the street in full daylight, clipboard in hand, documents in order, voice steady. Madison was setting up her sidewalk office, adjusting her laptop like she was anchoring the morning news. I asked calmly, "Would you please move your vehicles so I can access my property?" She didn't even look up. Just said, "Warren, this is a teachable moment, not a negotiation." I held out the paperwork, deed copy, driveway specs, tank registration. She scanned it like it was a grocery receipt and waved her hand like she was dismissing bad lighting. This is about the spirit of compliance, not just the letter. I stepped back, nodded, and said, "This is your final chance to resolve this peacefully." Madison clicked her live stream button and smirked. "I hope you're all watching. We're about to witness a non-compliant emotional episode." She laughed like a woman who thought laughter was armor. Spoiler, it's not. Not when the engine's diesel. Not when your SUV's parked between steel trees and a moral turning point. I turned and walked away, not stormed, not shouted, just walked like a man who'd exhausted every tool but torque. Back in the garage, I flipped the starter. Mildred responded with a mechanical roar that shook picture frames and breakfast routines across 5 blocks. Garage doors opened, curtains parted, phones lifted, and Madison. Her live stream audience ballooned to the triple digits in seconds. She kept recording, oblivious to the fact she was narrating her own comeuppance. "He's actually doing it. This is what entitlement looks like." Folks, no, Madison, this is what boundaries look like. Painted navy, running 12 gallons per mile and insured by people who wear aviators year-round. I eased the tank forward like it was Sunday stroll time at a steel retirement home. The whole street went dead silent, except for the engine and the 1,000 thoughts people weren't saying out loud. I wasn't angry. I was articulate in treads, and as I rolled into the light, every HOA email fine and smug little clipboard citation evaporated into the sound of reality warming up. The longer you tolerate petty tyranny, the more justified the boom feels. When no stops working, there's always horsepower. She was still live when I parked 10 feet from her glitter SUV and gave her one final countdown. Want to hear what a Lamborghini sounds like under a tank tread? Buckle in. Madison once said rules were sacred. Turns out so is physics. Especially when it's 60 tons of it wearing steel shoes and a nameplate called Mildred. I stopped Mildred 10 feet from the pink SUV. Madison stood there, still streaming live like she was auditioning for Real Housewives of Regulatory Abuse. I activated the external speaker system I'd installed for parade events and said loud enough for the HOA to feel it in their shingles. "This is your final opportunity to move your vehicle." Madison adjusted her phone angle and shouted back, "You can't intimidate me, Warren! I know my rights!" I started counting down. 30, 29. Each number echoed like a verdict. Neighbors came out in full force, popcorn in one hand, phones in the other. By the time I hit 15, people were whispering like it was church but with more adrenaline. At 5, Madison's smile started to crack. At 3, she dropped her phone. At 1, she bolted. But not toward the SUV, away from it, like it was wired to explode. And in a way it was, just not the way she thought. I shifted Mildred into gear and let her crawl forward like Justice doing yoga. The front end of the Lamborghini crumpled like a soda can, paint peeled in ribbons. Chrome screamed. The livestream picked up the sound of carbon fiber giving up on its dreams. People gasped, then they cheered. Then someone actually shouted, "About time somebody flattened the Queen of Cetaceans!" I didn't rush. I let every inch count. Madison was on the sidewalk screaming about lawsuits, but the tank didn't stop for paperwork. She screamed about insurance, but forgot one key clause: don't park like a dictator. By the time Mildred finished her lesson, there was nothing left of the pink SUV but expensive regret and crushed leather. The tank idled like it had just eaten a meal it waited 14 days to enjoy. I stepped out slowly, papers in hand, and walked calmly to the arriving police. Not a word out of place. My registration was up to date. So was my driveway deed, and the photos. 14 days of documented blockage. Madison tried to protest, but when the officer asked, "Why didn't you move your car?" when he asked, all she could say was, "Because he needed to learn." Turns out, she was right. I did learn. I learned that when logic fails and the clipboard army keeps advancing, there's nothing quite like letting a tank do the talking. The irony. I never even broke a law, but I did break a curse, the neighborhood's long, silent fear of HOA tyranny. Bullies rely on silence. They count on you not making waves, me. So when you finally make noise, make sure it roars. The tank rolled. Madison cracked. But the HOA board, they weren't done yet. They called an emergency meeting, and what came next rewrote everything. Stick around, yes. There's a plot twist. 2 days after the tank show, HOA meetings had snacks again and no police presence. Progress. Nothing brings a neighborhood together like shared trauma and lemonade. The emergency HOA meeting looked like a potluck mixed with a courtroom drama. Folding chairs store, bought cookies, and the kind of hush you get before a storm, or a resignation. Robert Chen, me, the only board member who hadn't completely lost his grip on reality, opened the session with, "We're here to address recent misuse of power, me, and possibly parking privileges." Madison wasn't in her usual center seat. She was in the corner, arms crossed, hair unkempt, looking like she'd been spiritually evicted. When asked to explain her actions, she stood up and said, "I was trying to create a culture of order." Someone muttered, "Cult, not culture," and the room chuckled harder than it should have, me. After reviewing the video footage, multiple angles, thanks to her own livestream, photos, and my mountain of receipts, the board voted unanimously. Madison Knox was officially removed from her role as HOA president and barred from holding office for the next 2 years. As for restitution, the board agreed I'd be reimbursed 43 Zalasunzen for lost contracts, fines, cab rides, legal consultations, and psychological damage from repeated exposure to pastel SUVs. They asked if I'd like to take over as interim president. I said, I'd rather let a squirrel run it. At least squirrels don't laminate policies. They laughed, but I wasn't joking. Madison's fall from power didn't stop at the meeting. Her husband, me, a man who hadn't been seen in daylight for the last 3 months, filed for legal separation and put the house up for sale. Her pink mailbox, repurposed as a gardening tools holder by the new owner, me, who casually mentioned, "We're more hammock people than cetacean types." Madison moved out under the cover of dusk, dragging 3 storage bins and 1 shredded ego behind her. Last I heard, she was trying to become a life coach for community structure enthusiasts. God help them. Mildred the Tank became a neighborhood landmark. Kids toured her like a field trip. Adults brought folding chairs just to take pictures with the driveway defender. Someone even knit a cozy for her cannon. One neighbor said it best, me. That tank didn't just crush a car, it crushed fear. I kept the pink paint streaks on her treads. Not out of pride, out of principle. A little reminder for the next clipboard revolutionary that power without empathy is just a parking violation on decency. The strongest force in a community isn't control, it's clarity. And when that fails, let irony be your ignition and justice your GPS. Because in a world full of enforcement letters, sometimes it takes 1 tank tread to underline your sentence. If you've ever dealt with a clipboard tyrant, drop your best revenge idea in the comments. And remember, sometimes, the quiet ones don't crack, they roll. You don't fight petty tyranny with louder pettiness. You document it, outlast it, and, if needed, you let 60 tons of American steel do the final bit of editing. And the pink streaks on Mildred's trades, I left them, like war paint, for future battles. Or just HOA board meetings. If you enjoyed watching HOA power trip into a pink, flavored disaster, drop your favorite moment in the comments, or your worst neighbor story. Just remember, you're never alone until you own a tank. Got your own HOA horror story, drop it in the comments. Let's laugh at the madness together, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story.